Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about top 25 picks for the week. So, I unveiled the top 25 metric rankings, but I figured let's look at the top 25 team, games this week. So, looking at the data and then making some picks based on the data, based on the available data. Of course, I did the video on this subject last week. I had some success, not so success. We're still early on to the season. A lot of teams haven't gotten to the meat of their conference games and all the other kind of stuff. So still more information that we need to have, but I figured at this point, it's still a lot of data. We still can conclude a couple things about some of these teams. And I figured that this would be sort of the way of getting into it. So let's get into it. So when it comes to this week, all the regular data stuff, so all the sort of basic data stuff that I usually talk about in other videos is right here. So you can use this data how you see fit. It basically goes over what their winning record is right at this point compared to their peers, how many points they've put up compared to their peers, completion percentage, the amount of fumbles they've given up on offense compared to their peers, how many interceptions they've given up on offense, how many turnovers they've had total, then of course how many points they've given up on defense. The less points you give up, the higher your score is there. Completion percentage, how high the completion percentage is that you give up as a defense, the amount of fumbles you create as a defense, the amount of interceptions you create as a defense, the amount of turnovers you create as a defense. And then, of course, you have just combinations of other sort of data points. So, strength of SOSW is like strength of schedule plus wins to tell you how loyal are those wins. Did these wins come against really weak people or opponents, or did they come against really tough opponents? And then, of course, O/D/SOS is a combination of the points on offense, points allowed on defense, plus the strength of schedule they faced. Of course, strength of schedule is, strength SOS is strength of schedule. And then, of course, you have the regular ranking system, which is just a combination of all these numbers into one sort of thing in terms of the rankings. So getting to the picks. So far this week, Louisville is favored over North Carolina State. This is a very close matchup, though. That's the one thing I want to point out. When you look at the overall data for Louisville and North Carolina State, the only reason why North Carolina State isn't favored in this game is because their offense just doesn't put up as many points as Louisville. But it's really close. I mean, we're talking about, at least based on the data that I have right now, the difference is 85.13 to 81.92, and that's based on the offensive. The points the offense is scoring versus the points the defense is giving up. That's basically what that score is, the O/DPts score. But it's close. And when you look at the overall indicators, they actually favor North Carolina State. North Carolina State has less fumbles as its offense. They have less interceptions as an offense. They have less overall turnovers as an offense. But the defenses are fairly similar. The North Carolina State has a better defense. But that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about an offense in Louisville that is really explosive, puts up a ton of points, versus North Carolina State, who has an offense that doesn't put up, it puts up plenty of points, but it doesn't put up a ton of points. But it also doesn't create a lot of turnovers. So that's going to be really key in this game. If turnovers could be a deciding factor in this game if they allow it to happen. So this is a game that I don't feel the best about, despite the data favoring Louisville. Again, the data overall favors Louisville because they're able to put up more points. That's true. But I don't feel the best about it just because of how well North Carolina State has played over the course of this season. I think this is one of those, as many people call it, a trap game, because I think that there is things on paper that if Lamar Jackson or if this offense doesn't have a very good night, if they create a lot of turnovers on offense, then this could be North Carolina State. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. So overall, the data favors Louisville, but North Carolina State, definitely there is some questions with that. Then we get to Clemson versus Wake Forest. Clemson is favored in this game overall based on data. Clemson just puts up more points. That's the basic thing when you look at the overall differences. They put up more points, but Wake Forest is not the same Wake Forest guys that we've seen in the past. They're playing a lot better on offense. They're playing a lot better on defense than they typically have in the past. So this isn't going to be like a rollover type game. It could end up that way because of Clemson, but Clemson definitely, I think, has a good shot to win this football game based on all the data. But keep in mind that Wake Forest is not exactly a pushover either. So that's just the basic points with that one. Then, of course, we get to Iowa State versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma's favored in this game. They just put up more points. I mean, there's nothing really else to say about that. Oklahoma has put up more points, and Oklahoma's defense has not allowed as many points as well. So that's a big sort of advantage for Oklahoma overall in that particular game. Oklahoma's defense, as surprising as that might sound, has not been the worst when it comes to preventing points. Then we get to Northwestern versus Penn State. When it comes to this particular game, it's Penn State overall. Saquon Barkley is amazing. And, of course, overall, Penn State's defense has been good at preventing points. I don't want to count Northwestern out per se, but it just overwhelmingly favors Pitt. Like, it would be a massive upset if this actually were to occur. So that's just the basic points with that. Then, of course, we get Georgia versus Vanderbilt. Georgia is heavily favored in this game over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just can't put up points. No other ways around it. If you can't put up points, you're not going to win a lot of football games. And so far, they're 17.63 out of 100 when it comes to the amount of points they've been able to put up on offense since 2009. So that's not good. If that continues, same thing, Georgia victory. Auburn versus Ole Miss. Auburn is favored in this particular game. Ole Miss has not been the best when it comes to putting up points. And on top of that, Ole Miss has also struggled to prevent points on defense. They've been one of the worst teams in college football. They scored a 12.38 out of 100 when it comes to allowing points on defense. And there's nothing else to say. Like, Auburn is, they're able to put up points. Their defense is able to prevent points, so they're favored. Then, of course, we get to TCU over West Virginia. TCU is favored in this game. Their offenses are pretty even. TCU and West Virginia have very similar offenses. But when it comes to defense, West Virginia has given up more points than TCU. So overall, the data favors TCU. But I do think this might end up being a closer game than people realize based on overall data. Then, of course, we get to Florida State versus Miami. Miami's pretty much favored in this particular game. The one thing I would say is when it comes to Florida State's biggest issue, it's putting up points on the board. I mean, Florida State so far is 8.10 out of 100 when it comes to overall points that they've been able to put up on the board compared to 2009 versus Miami, who scored a 94.21 out of 100. Like, this might actually be a game. Now, of course, Florida State fans will say, well, we have all these injuries and we have this and we have that. And sure, there's perfectly reasons why as to Florida State is not doing what it needs to do in terms of putting up points. But that doesn't change the fact that you have one team that is putting up a lot of points. You have another team that's not scoring a lot of points. It's just not going to end well. There's no other way around it. So Miami's favored in that game. Then, of course, we get North Carolina versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame is favored in this game. As much hate as Notre Dame has had, they've been able to put up points. Their defense has been able to not allow a lot of points. So while the management of the team has been kind of, and of course when it comes to completion percentage, the quarterback they have is not the best when it comes to completion percentage. I mean, his completion percentage compared to the rest of college football is 8.73 out of 100. That's how bad the completion percentage overall is in terms of offensively for Notre Dame. But they're still able to put up points. Their defense is still able to prevent points. So this is pretty much a Notre Dame victory, based on the available data. And then, of course, we get Florida versus LSU. The data favors... it's kind of tough. The data overall does favor Florida. Only reason why is because when it comes to the basic indicators, Florida and LSU are basically the same team when it comes to the overall data points they've been able to put up. Like, they're teams that don't put up a lot of points. They're teams that don't allow a lot of points. LSU's defense has not allowed a lot of points compared to Florida, but Florida has played a much tougher schedule. So the overall data does favor Florida in this particular matchup, but these are very similar teams, so it could go either way. It's also at LSU. LSU's coming off an embarrassing loss to Troy. So don't be surprised that LSU just shows up and, has one of those types of games. So, again, the data overall favors Florida, but you have to understand this is Florida on the road against the LSU that was just embarrassed against Troy. They could either continue to be embarrassed by Florida, or they could come in, hitting on all cylinders and end up winning a tough game. So, it's however you like to view this. That's, I would say it's a little bit tougher to predict this one particular game because of the circumstances. Then, of course, we get to Maryland, Ohio State. The overall data favors Ohio State, basically because of the defense of Maryland. Maryland's defense has been bad. They've been 30.72 out of 100 when it comes to points given up on defense, compared to 2009. And Ohio State's defense is 94.84, and they also have an offense that puts up points. So Maryland's been able to put up points on offense, but they haven't been able to prevent points on defense. So Ohio State's favored in that game. Then, of course, we get USC versus Oregon State. Probably a good game for USC to get its stuff together, so to speak. USC has had lots of problems when it comes to turnovers. They've had lots of problems when it comes to a lot of different things. But this is a game that they go into where they're going up against an offense that doesn't put up a lot of points. They're going up against defense that allows a lot of points. So I see this as pretty much a USC victory. Then, of course, we get Alabama versus Texas A&M. This favors Alabama. Alabama is pretty much the top-ranked team, top-rated team, at least based on all available data this year. They're able to put up a ton of points. They don't allow a lot of points on defense. And they're going against Texas A&M, which is able to put up points, but their defense is just meh. So I think overall, again, Alabama victory. Then, of course, we get Boston College versus Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is heavily favored in this particular game. Boston College is just not very good this year over the last couple of games. Harold Landry is definitely going to be a fun player to watch in this game, but this is a game to watch Harold Landry, not a game to watch Boston College win. Then, of course, we get Michigan versus Michigan State. Overall data favors Michigan. Michigan's able to put up more points on offense. Defensively, they're pretty similar. Michigan's been better in terms of not giving up as many points to Michigan State. So there is that kind of factor to it. It is a rivalry game, so you're going to have other things playing into it. But overall, the data does favor Michigan because they're able to put up more points on offense. Nebraska, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's pretty heavily favored in this particular matchup because of offensively and defensively. They're able to put up more points and prevent more points on offense and defense, which just gives the advantage to Wisconsin. Oregon, Washington State. This is too close to call, really. Both these teams, the only real differences between Oregon and Washington State comes down to defense. Washington State's defense has not given up as many points as Oregon up to this point, but they're very similar indicators in terms of the competition they played, in terms of what they've been able to do on offense. So this is a little too close to call. I'll say that much about this particular game, but the overall data does favor Washington State, but I do think it's a little too close to call. And then, of course, we get Cincinnati versus UCF. Central Florida. Central Florida is heavily favored in this game because of their offense and their defense. And then, of course, we get Stanford versus Utah. Stanford is favored in this game because of their offense. And Bryce Love is amazing. If you don't, you guys should definitely check out Bryce Love. He's already at 1,000 yards this season, and it's not even October yet. Well, it's October now, but yeah, guy you should definitely check out. But yeah, Stanford's heavily favored in this game based on the offense they've been able to do. And then, of course, we get to California versus Washington. Washington's favored in this game. San Diego State versus UNLV. San Diego State's favored in this game. So overall, these are the picks for the top 25 this week. Of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well if anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.